Hello and welcome back to the Figure Forecast podcast with your host Scarlett.
And
And
Maeve, we are super excited today. We have our second stunning guest on, another IFBB figure pro and four-time Olympian, Miss Rhea Gayle. Welcome.
Hi, how are you? How are you?
So first off, thank you so much for taking the time to tee it up with the two of us, UK, Oz, Texas. Oh my God. We really appreciate it and we cannot wait to dive into this episode. We're pumped to have you on.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Um, so I guess we will start off like any other kind of podcast right here. Tell us about you, kind of who you are, and mainly kind of your journey and entry into the world of bodybuilding.
Okay, so hi guys, I'm Rhea. I'm an IFBB figure pro and four-time Olympian. I started competing in 2016. Prior to sort of even thinking about getting on stage, I was a diver. And sort of towards the end, when I kind of stepped away from diving, I was like, kind of, what do I do now? Like, my identity has always been doing a sport. So obviously I kind of stepped away from that and was having a break. And at the same time, I started working as a personal trainer and was training in the gym. Not that we don't train in the gym at diving, but everything is just so different. So it was kind of just like, oh, I kind of enjoy this. It's been really good for my mental health, sort of getting in the gym and trying something different. And a couple of the people that I was working with competed, and I was like, oh, this is something that I might want to try. Like, it gives me a goal again, and there's no pressure if I set a date and don't have to do this competition. I just see what happens. And yeah, I think it was like the English Grand Prix in UK BFF at the time. And I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to do it. I had no idea. I was wearing a neon green bikini.
Oh
Hair was yeah. Insert pic here. But yeah, my hair was a mess. Like, but I loved it. Like, there was just something about it that I was like, this is it. And that's why, like, when people first start competing, and I'm like, just give it a try, because some people might love it and then they take to it like a duck to water, or some people like, okay, I've done it once, this isn't for me. So yeah, and I've kind of just been going since then.
Do you think, like, obviously being like a high level competitive athlete in diving
Mm.
beforehand,
Mhm.
it was like an easier transition nearly, like because you were very structured, regimented, used to training, used to having a challenge, having a very extreme goal, or
Yeah, I would kind of like, the principles are very similar in terms of kind of being disciplined for your training, and you've got a goal, you've got to work towards it. But it was very different in the sense of, when I was going to training, I didn't have a coach physically there telling me what I need to do. So you kind of have to have that intrinsic motivation to do what you need to do, and like getting used to eating 5, 6 times a day. Whereas anyone that knew me through diving in university, I was never kind of a big eater. It was Haribo's and cereal.
yeah, lots of quick carbs.
Yeah. Yes.
so with them, when you first did your first ever show,
Mhm.
how long did it take you then to become pro? And didn't you do fitness as well did you turn pro in fitness?
Yeah, tell us this story.
Tell the people. Yes. So I competed in my first show was July of 2016. I turned pro in June of 2018. So it was an amateur Olympia. And that was when there was, from 2017 going into 2018, that's when we had two bros coming and kind of fighting for the UK athletes to then be able to get their pro cards. So it kind of opened this massive opportunity for a lot more people from the UK to compete internationally and compete at more shows. So I actually done the Amateur Olympia in Alicante in 2018, and there was a crossover. So my coach at the time was like, okay, you're going to do figure, because that's what we do. Love it. And
Yeah.
then he was like, don't you have a gymnastics background? And I was like, yeah, I can do like a few bits and bobs. And he's like, why not try fitness? And I was like, why not? Like, it's just another avenue. It's another thing to try. And yeah, I ended up getting my pro card in fitness.
That's insane. I need to see this
Yeah.
routine video, by the way.
Yeah.
I need it.
Yeah. It
Is
was
that
really
something
bizarre.
like you'd ever considered continuing, or were you like you were always going to be figure?
Yeah. It was a one and done, more so just because I have so much respect for the fitness division, but I don't think with sort of my injuries prior to, like from diving and gymnastics, like with my knees and stuff, I would have had the longevity needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you just do the one show where you obviously turned pro in fitness? Yeah.
Two
I
bits
turned
and
pro in
bobs, I'll
fitness.
just win my pro card.
I know, yeah. I turned pro in fitness at that show, and then it was at the time they had a pro show attached to the Amateur Olympia in Alicante. So then I done the pro show, my pro debut, a couple of hours later in figure, and came fifth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from an early point, you were pretty on the money. We could say that much.
It was fun. It was
Definitely.
fun.
So since then,
Mhm.
how long did it take you? Obviously, because you've won loads of pro shows. Now you've got loads under your belt. So like, how long did it take you from like that first initial sort of placing to then be like up at the top ranks?
So my first win was in 2020. So I had quite a long season, 2019, where I was like, okay, we've turned pro. A lot of the sort of high level figure pros at the time were over in the States. So I was like, you know what? Let's not play small. Let's sort of go balls to the wall and just see how you fare, because sometimes you've got to do that. You can't just like play safe at like smaller shows and kind of see where you stand. You kind of, at the end of the day, the goal is the Olympia. The best girls are going to be on that stage. So why not kind of seek out shows where they are competing? So 2019, I done New York, Puerto Rico, Toronto, Chicago, and Virginia, and then went to the Olympia on points. And then it was kind of the 2020 season where the first win arrived.
Yeah.
So your
How did
first
that feel
year
then?
as a pro, you did New York, Chicago, like all of the hardest pro shows you could pick. You were like,
Yeah,
we're gone.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I love it. I'd love,
Yeah.
love to do a season in the States. Like, is there a big difference, do you think, like competing in the States versus the UK in general?
Not anymore. Not anymore. I think it's an even playing field now in Europe and the States, especially with sort of the judges traveling to Europe as well for those shows. You'll find now that things are pretty similar. Like some of these European shows are hard. So I would kind of say like now, like, and it's a thing of like, it depends who shows up.
Yeah.
But I would say Europe, the States, very similar now.
Okay, interesting. Because it's like, obviously you hear it all the time, but you're not, you don't know until you go, right?
Yeah.
That, oh, you know, they're looking for X over there and like X
Mhm.
here, but
Mhm.
maybe that's more so in like bikini. Maybe they favor a little bit of different
Mhm.
looks versus.
Yeah. There is definitely like you can see the difference,
Mm,
but I think it's becoming now more uniform to keep it as like a worldwide standard, whereas before it was like the US looked like this and Europe looked like this. It's starting to do this,
yeah.
Yeah.
especially as
Would
now
you
more
say
Europeans are traveling to the States to compete.
would you say that since like you started competing, like you've noticed like a change in the class and like what they're looking for and things like that? From a point, anyway.
Yes and yes and no. In a, in the sense of a lot of the time it's like size is everything. And obviously as the years goes on, Miss Olympia, so Sid would sort of change and then the standard is very standardized because we have Sid number one, but then
Yeah.
also with what they look for as the years have gone on,
Mm,
it is a little bit more bigger, a little bit more denser, but obviously not crazy. And I kind of always go back to I was never the biggest, especially if I look at 2019. Like I was never the biggest or like the densest, but still was New York. I came third. Puerto Rico was
Yeah.
third. Toronto was fourth. Like it was still placing in those shows, but not having the biggest physique. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is sort of how you present yourself, balance, and kind of don't, even if you aren't the biggest person, don't count yourself out because sometimes the judges aren't just looking for size because there's other categories for that.
yeah, exactly. Like, because in the figure, it's very much on shape, presentation,
Yes,
and stuff. Versus
yes,
if you want to get big, 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 and very hard and dense,
yeah, yeah,
then yeah, there are obviously the other classes like physique
yeah,
and bodybuilding and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Um, while we are on presentation, obviously you are extremely passionate about posing and are a posing coach. You are my posing coach. My God, have you helped me? Oh, guys, you don't even want to see those first pictures. But like it really shows when you're working with someone who's very passionate about what they do and like
Mhm.
just the eye and the detail and you know, like kind of being able to look at somebody's physique and know that, okay, this pose is going to work so well on you. Like, what led you down that path, or like what sparked the love for posing in general?
I think I always go back to when I first, like my first ever show, like I had no idea. And I think it was like something stuck out to me with, again, I kind of go back to 2016, 17, 18, even 19, is you might not be the biggest person on stage, but if you can present yourself in a certain way and kind of have that presence, then you are able to catch the judges' attention in a positive light. And back then, looking at Latoya Watts, Candice, and Sid, I absolutely like just loved how they moved on stage. Like I was obsessed.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things that I kind of said to myself, I really want to be good at that. And then once I sort of started like practicing, it just became a thing that I was like, I really, really, really enjoy this aspect. And it's really, really important
How did you
in any division.
so how did you start to practice? Like, did you ever have anyone teach you, or did you completely just learn yourself?
So when I first started, it was like okay, I'm just gonna look at what these girls are doing. And at the time that I started, it was actually the 2016 Arnold Classic. And I was like, okay, so they're kind of like doing this, and then they're kind of like doing this. And
Exactly
like
like that.
literally, and like I was so robotic and just so like stiff and just not in the right positions. And then later down the line, I've had posing coaches, so I've learned from Sid and then kind of taken things to mold things into myself and then having that passion to teach others. Because at the time when I first started, I didn't have that. And it wasn't like you could, like today, you could go on Instagram and see, oh, X, Y, and Z as a posing coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important would you say posing is, like, obviously specifically in the figure class, but in general as well? Like, what difference do you think it makes to your placings and, like, you know, like you getting looked at, and just the experience on the day? Like, how important is it to practice good posing?
Like, personally, like a 10. Because like I think everybody that does this sport can be very self-critical. So like if I get like a video back and I'm like, oh God, why did I do that? Like, oh, that doesn't like, so I think it's just one of those things that you work so hard on dieting or like in off season, building that tissue and training hard and like doing all of those to then not display it properly.
Yeah.
Like not opening your back properly or sitting on your hamstrings or getting your quads out or like keeping the midsection tight. Like all of those things matter, especially like when they're constantly turning you. And from a conditioning point of view as well, like the more you practice posing and holding your posing close to the time, when you're on stage and they are holding front pose for like 3 minutes, you're not going to be the one that's shaking or like sweating or getting softer. So it is just one of those things that I personally think is super important. And from going to a couple of posing seminars, even most recently in Houston with Sandy, with her saying the same thing, that there might be someone with an incredible physique and someone that's not quite there. But if the person that's not quite there has a presence about them and is confident and is posing well, the judges are most likely to look at that than someone
because
that
you're
has an
drawing the
amazing physique and
attention.
not.
Yeah. And it is so noticeable, like when you look at a lineup, and it's like, it's hard to look at sometimes.
Yeah.
What if you're someone who's like not naturally like that confident in sort of heels and things like that, but like what would you say to someone who wants to build that confidence up, like from a
So
posing point of view?
yeah, so again with that, I was always the person that I would go on nights out in trainers.
Yeah.
I was never
Same.
kind of natural in, never natural in heels and never kind of natural in my movements. And like a lot of people don't believe me when I say that, because they'll look at like my post and presentation now, they're like, no, like I have 2 left feet and I used to move like a robot, but it's just about, like you do with your training, it's just about putting the reps in. And like
Yeah.
if you're thinking about competing, say it's now, so we're in April, and someone's thinking about competing in December, don't wait until you're lean to think about posing. You need to start when you have that idea of competing, because it's about putting the reps in to feel confident and comfortable in what you're doing, rather than like, oh, I'll have a few sessions at like 6 weeks out.
Yeah, and but you can tell those people, like 100%.
Yes.
Even like the people standing beside you can tell, because I know, like we work together since I literally started with Meg, and
Yes.
I was not figure when we started. Like it was not a figure shape there. Oh my God, did we practice?
Yeah. Just like I can't stress it enough. And like a lot of people are like, oh, you're probably just saying that because but I'm like, it makes the difference. Like putting in the practice of posing before the idea of stepping on stage comes to mind.
And it can be hard because like when you don't see yourself in that light yet, it can be like, oh, what am I doing? Like I don't look like that. My poses don't look like that. But it's just getting comfortable, nearly like moving and like the flow and
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And then once you're leaner, I suppose you can just add them touches to make sure that you're showing the best for your
Most
shape, isn't it,
definitely.
really?
Most definitely. And like Maeve can tell you that poses will change the leaner you get. Like, how
Yeah.
many times did we change your routine?
Yeah, because I had no glutes.
So like you have that, you're at the point like in a prep where you've been practicing your posing that depending on how your body comes in, you then can manipulate things.
Yeah, which is class. It's so cool. And then when you get the pose and you feel
Yes,
comfortable in it,
yes,
I think
yes.
the confidence comes a lot more. When you're
Oh
trying to
yeah.
do something, you know it doesn't look 100%, you're not 100% comfortable in it.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
just doesn't, yeah. And then everyone else can tell, well, she's not
Yeah.
very comfortable doing that. So practice your posing.
Yes.
You mentioned obviously you visited the States to compete, but you've since
Hmm.
moved to the
Hmm.
States and you are
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
Texas, y'all, right
I
now,
am
Cowboy
in
Land.
Texas, y'all. Yes.
How is it living over there with that environment and kind of being surrounded by the amount of pros, like top level kind of athletes, coaches, amazing gyms? Like, what is it like to prep there versus in rainy England?
So I definitely think like wherever you are, I now firmly believe that wherever you are, as long as you have the right environment and the right mindset and support system, you can prep anywhere. And that came to mind in 2020 when there was the dreaded C took over the world.
Yeah. We
And
don't
like
talk about that.
I
Banned on
don't
our
mention that.
podcast.
So I just think sort of when I had to for the Olympia in 2020, when I couldn't fly directly to the States and I had to do a whole 2 weeks of prep at 4 weeks out in Mexico. So
Yeah, I
like
remember. I
Taco
remember that.
yes,
Tuesdays.
yeah, literally.
Weren't you
And then
living in
2020,
Cancun?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then 2021, the same thing. I had to be in Dubai for 2 weeks, and you're out of your own environment. And we just such creatures of habit. Like at home, it's like, okay, we're gym, cardio, this, like coming down to like a certain machine. It's like, this is my cardio machine. Like you get so, and being pushed out of your environment, especially in 2020, I was like, I can do this anywhere and kind of not have that attachment to not a set routine because everyone needs routine, but just like a set place.
Yeah.
But now being here, it's like a make the most of it and
Yeah.
really try and like flourish with the environment that I'm in.
Yeah.
But in terms
Yeah.
of like being at home and here, it's definitely like a mindset thing for sure. Because again, in the UK, there are some awesome gyms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are.
Would you say that the bodybuilding scene is like bigger in Texas than obviously the UK is small, but compared to Texas, but
It's definitely big here, but obviously Texas is so big that it's not like a every left step you take or every corner you turn, you see a bodybuilder.
yeah.
And like there is, even though bodybuilding is universal, I think wherever you are, it's very different.
Yeah. 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 Um, there is a phrase you use a lot, and we really want to kind of just ask where it came from and like how does it govern or affect your daily life. I absolutely love it. Scarlett absolutely loves it, and I just think it's such a good little like pocket rocket of motivation, like fire in the belly shit. And that's obviously no more fear, no more doubt. So where is that from, or like what is it all about?
So, oh God, I want to say 2019 that came to light, end of 2019, around that time. And I think it's one of those things that anybody that knows me knows that mindset for me and like self-belief definitely comes in waves. Like no matter how many now pro shows I've won and like proved to myself that I can do it or stood on the Olympia stage, I'm still a little bit like, can I do this? Like it might sound really crazy, but it's that sort of statement came in 2019 when I did push myself out of my comfort zone and like done those American shows and got to the Olympia for the first time and was 12th, 13th at that Olympia. And I was just like, after that in Vegas, I was kind of like, I was so scared and had so much doubt, but like still made it happen. And then like going into 2020 with the first pro win, and it was like I was so anxious because it was the only show, an opportunity that I had to compete because you couldn't fly over here, and it was the Europa Pro, and it was like I was out of my mind. Like I love competing, and like I still get so nervous at shows, but this I was like out of my mind. I was like, there's only one shot to get this qualification, and that's it. And it was like a no more fear, no more doubt. Like, don't doubt yourself. Stop being so scared about it and just kind of get it done.
How
So
did the
that's kind
first
of like
pro
where,
win feel?
oh God, like I was a mess. I'm not like an overly emotional person, but I just remember I was like, yeah, I was like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Mad. So how
Olympia,
did you first, sorry, how did you your first Olympia feel like? How was that different to stepping on, you know, your pro stages and things like that? Did it feel any different? Like, were you more
It was like a
nervous?
fever. Yeah, it was like a fever dream. I was like, has this,
yeah, like were
are
you
we
looking
doing this?
around at all these people going, oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. It was like it was very surreal, but I also try to like, I'm someone that can get very overwhelmed very easily and very quickly, especially when I'm, it's a stage where I get to compete against the girls that I've looked up to since starting the sport. So there's that. There's it being the Olympia, there's it being like thousands of people. And it was one that kind of in that prep for it, I was kind of like, at the end of the day, it's the same. All the variables are the same as competing on a normal stage. There's a stage, there's lights, there's music, there's judges, there's competitors, there's myself, and I can only focus on what I can control. And it was one of those where I didn't want to be like, oh my God, it's the Olympia, like getting really sort of overwhelmed, but kind of think like everything is the same. The title and meaning are different, but every variable is the same. So kind of bring myself into that place of like, I can take it in, but not let it overwhelm me and be like, oh my God, this is the Olympia. And like freaking myself out. But it was unbelievable.
Are there any wins
Unbelievable.
for you, like during your career, that stand out? Like, did any mean any more than another, or like any more memorable?
I have two. There's me holding up four fingers. I have two. In terms of like wins, probably 2020, because that year like was tough of being in Australia for 2 months, not knowing whether like I'd be able to compete that season and going through that prep and
Oh
winning the
God, yeah, because
Europa.
you couldn't to do the Arnold, didn't you?
Yeah,
Oh God, what a
yeah,
mess.
yeah. What a man. So that was probably that season was probably a big, always stands out in my career and really kind of lit a fire under me of you can't take anything for granted or like sit back and think like, oh, everything will be fine because it'll be taken away in a minute. And then probably my season last year, getting that first pro win again after a not so good mental season of 2021. So they're probably the two
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
have really been like, okay.
You obviously, like, you talk about keeping your mindset very strong a lot. Is there anything in particular you do to kind of keep that at a, you know, like a high performance kind of level, feeling good, positive? Like, is there any kind of things you do day to day that help with that?
So first things first, I'll say I am human. I definitely have times when I'm like, stress is high, mindset is very kind of like, again, doubting myself a lot and kind of letting things that I can't control infiltrate my mind. But a lot of things I tend to do is journaling and kind of like being vocal with my thoughts, but by putting them on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you like struggle to talk to people and like you're someone that kind of just keeps everything in, like dumping it on paper. Also, social media, I will take breaks from Instagram
Oh God, yeah.
just
The
just
social
because
detox.
sometimes it can be, yeah, it can be so like comparing yourself, and this goes for anybody that's competing, whether you're a beginner or kind of just turning pro, and like there's always that next standard that you're like, oh, that's what I need to do, that's what I need to do this. It's sometimes just information overload, and just like sometimes your algorithm just is negative and you take that in. So it's one of those where I try to like limit that and get my thoughts down on paper and just go back to your why. Like, why do you do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think though, like the environment as well, and the company you keep and the circle you have and stuff has a lot
Oh
to do
yeah.
with it as
Oh,
well.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Is there anything that like you would maybe say to anyone who is kind of like an amateur level, or even just like new pros, like who might be feeling a little bit of like the struggles and stuff? Like, what would you kind of recommend to them to think like, and you know, to keep them going if they are
Yeah.
struggling, like even with the comparison of like
hmm
social media and things like that, because you know you're always going to be in that mindset, aren't you?
hmm I definitely think it's you vs you. You can have inspirations. I certainly do, even to this day, I do, because it helps you kind of strive to that next level. You know, you get that, what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of want to elevate every outlet. So you're really kind of acting like that. So for an amateur, acting like a pro.
Yeah.
And for a pro, acting like how a top Olympian would.
Yeah.
But then also thinking like it's you vs you, thinking of ways to be better, but don't be comparing yourself because this is your journey. And like take each day as it comes. Yes, you want to kind of have a plan of like where you want to be in a year, 2, 3, but sometimes that can really cause like anxiety if you don't feel like you're there yet. Like, oh, this is what I need to do. Da, da, da. So take each day as it comes. Don't compare yourself, but you can use people for inspiration and like, oh God, that's my favorite pro, and she gets to sleep on time. She eats all her meals. She trains really hard. You can kind of take that, but don't be like, oh, why don't I look like that? Because at the end of the day, it's your journey.
Yeah. And like you can't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20, realistically. And we
Right.
all do it. Oh my God, we all do
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't do that. But I love
Yeah.
that whole thing of, and like I say it so often as well to
hmm
people who, like non-competitive people, it's what kind of woman do you want to be a year from now?
hmm
Start acting like
hmm
her. And that's how you
Yes.
get to become her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, because
And
I
Um,
feel
obviously,
like,
no more
because
fear, no more doubt.
you what?
yeah,
I
no
said
more
no
fear,
more
no
fear,
more
no more
doubt.
doubt.
Honey, we love it. It's the new motto. It's the new motto. Um, we we have 3 questions that we would love to ask you, and we ask anybody who's going to grace us with their presence. And obviously you've touched on, you say you still have people who inspire you, motivate you, and you look up to. So is there anyone in particular that comes to mind who you think like, yes, boss bitch, like she's incredible?
Obviously, Stid.
Yeah.
Like, just obviously she's got a lot of skin in the game. She's been doing this from a young age, but just like her mentality and, you know, 6-time Miss Olympia, that's like,
Yeah.
and just turned 30. Like, yeah. So it's one of those that's just like from day one, I've just been like, wow. And especially like working her way up and now just like staying on top. Top of my head, Meg knows that she's one of my inspirations just from like mindset, everything. Like, she's incredible. Who else? I think when it's the sort of the third person, I don't think it's a person, but I think it's just a lot of attributes from people that I have around me that I'm like, I could do that to elevate you even further.
Yeah. Yeah. Like different energies and behaviors, and yeah,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And we probably know the answer here, but what is your ultimate goal? Say it, say it,
Say it.
say it.
I think my ultimate goal and sort of like my current goal and like ultimate goal are very similar, but obviously not similar. But obviously, like my ultimate goal, I like have it down on paper, but I like always get scared to say it. But I'll say like
we know
I'll
what it
say
is.
like I'll say like my current going into my ultimate goal would be a top 5 Olympian for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you're prepping at the moment, right?
Not yet.
No, yeah, no. Oh my God, when does prep start? Or are we keeping it secret?
Oh, the thing is like at the end of the day, people are like, I'll keep my prep secret, but people post photos all the time. People can kind of tell. But I will start prep like May 8th.
Yeah. Have you got anything in
Um,
mind, or are you just
Shooting for September,
yeah?
so that it's kind of like a giving ourselves time. And yeah, just I'm excited.
Yeah. So what, obviously before you start prep, we'll ask this question as well. So what is your all-time favorite food, or if you were on death row, like what would you have to have? Like, what's your go-to?
Oh
it's the
goodness.
good shit.
Take the
Okay,
bodybuilding head off.
yeah, if it was death row, I'm trying to think like I get obsessed with food, not obsessed with food, but I will find myself having like the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, you go through
Um,
phases.
yeah, so like if it was like at the minute, it would have to be the bread rolls from Texas Roadhouse. They're unbelievable. If I could post them to you, I would, but they'd be cold.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And they come with
I'll
like a
be over
little,
for Thanksgiving.
they have like a little cinnamon butter.
Oh.
And then, yeah, oh, they're amazing. And then there's actually a ramen place that I'm obsessed with at the minute. And they have the most amazing vegetable spring rolls. And they also have a really nice beef and rice dish. And I'd probably have an orange.
What? An orange?
I'm obsessed with oranges at the minute.
I could kind of get it
Obsessed.
when you were in Florida, but did
Oh,
Texas really that's orange?
unbelievable. Like,
Okay.
love them. I'm sorry that that meal doesn't sound amazing, but to me,
Well, no,
yes.
right. Meg said paella, so you know.
Oh, I love it.
That is all for today, guys. Thank you so much, Rhea. Like, we really, 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 really appreciate you coming on. And I think you've given some really good insights for both amateurs, pros, and just fans of the sport. It's been a really good chat. So thank you so much.
And thank you both for giving Figure a platform.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, like, you know what? It's just after the Olympia last year, I was searching and searching and searching for show reviews, and I just couldn't get any. There was none. So yeah, no, we're really excited.
Yeah,
because we need to learn as well.
Like, yeah, I think it's especially with kind of like now how many shows are going on and kind of like the ability to have live stream at shows and the videographers now posting their stuff and photos and whatever. It is nice to kind of keep in the loop with it all.
Yeah,
'Cause I
understand
know
it.
there was a figure show this weekend and I was like, where, like, how are people getting on? Like,
Yeah.
It's
but
awesome.
yeah,
It's definitely becoming
no,
more popular, which is really exciting.
yeah.
Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you, like online for coaching, posing, creeping?
So you can find me on Instagram at Rhea Gayle. And then the link in my bio has a link to all of like my posing, my coaching, and anything. And also my DMs are like always open. Like you don't have to buy posing with me to ask me any questions about posing. Like I'm always happy to answer any questions, even if it's coaching or like whatever mindset or anything. My DMs are always open.
This is why we love you.
Beautiful.
And on that note, guys, that is us. That is episode 3 wrapped up. And we hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've learned a lot. And we will chat to you all next week for episode 4. Bye.